I find that, like everyone else, I am caught up in pre-Super Bowl frenzy that has gripped southwestern Pennsylvania, and I'll be thrilled to see our Steelers bring home the seventh trophy. However, I am always the student of sociology and theology, and I find myself occasionally stepping back from Steeler euphoria to take an objective look at what's happening. When I do that, I can't help but think that it would be nice if real life were sometimes more like a football game. First off, there's always an adversary in a football game, just as we always have some sort of adversary in life. But it's dealt with by a team, not an individual. The best football player on earth would be useless if he were on the field alone with his opponents. Knowing that, it's one of a coach's priorities to turn a group of players into a team, not a group of individuals. Wouldn't it be great if we had that advantage everywhere? In our independent, me-first society, too many of us focus on how we can advance ourselves instead of seeing ourselves as an integral part of a larger whole. So many of us are fighting life's battles alone because we don't have, or haven't allowed ourselves to have, teammates to fight them with us. In every interview I've heard or read with a Steeler player or coach this year, no matter how stellar the career has been for the person being interviewed, he immediately downplayed his own contribution and gave the credit to his teammates. Wouldn't it be wonderful if that happened where we work, or in organizations that we belong to, or even in our own families? One of the things I like best about the 2006 Super Bowl, when the Steelers beat the Seahawks, was seeing the entire team pay homage to Jerome Bettis. You might have expected the quarterback or the coach to get that kind of individual attention, but they didn't. Jerome was known for investing an enormous amount of time in helping every one of his teammates become the best that they could be, rather than focusing on himself, and they loved him for it. Jerome was a winner because he created a team of winners. Another area that I find football ahead of real life is the total disregard for a player's race or religion. Black, white, Asian, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, it doesn't matter. Ability matters, color and religion do not. Something else I've seen at Super Bowl games that I like is the introduction of the past most valuable players. Bart Starr is still revered in the football world 40 years after his career ended. Wouldn't it be great if that were true of all retired people? Unfortunately, in this country, older people are regarded as a problem to be solved, not people who are admired and recognized for what they achieved and contributed. Another aspect of football games that would improve life in general, if we copied it, is the singing of our national anthem before the game starts. Previous to fighting the battle of their lives, the two teams take a few minutes to stand together, listen to the national anthem, and be reminded of their common ground. If in the course of our lives we would take a few minutes before sparring with our enemies to reflect on what we have in common with them, they might not seem so much like enemies anymore. If we chose to, we humans could change ourselves in all the areas I've mentioned so that life would be more like football. Unfortunately, there's one aspect of life that we might like to have more like football, and we can't change it. Football has rules, a very detailed description of what a player in every position can and cannot do in order to help his team win the game. If they break one of those rules, a whistle blows, a flag goes down, everything stops, and a referee announces what the offender did and what the punishment is going to be. Then the game resumes. In real life, we have rules too. Civil and criminal laws work somewhat the same as football. Break one and your punishment is decided and meted out to you. Granted, it might take 3 years instead of 30 seconds, but it's still the same process. Where it all gets sticky is when we start talking about God's rules. Our Torah is our rule book. God gave us 613 rules, so most of us break a goodly number of them every day. When we do, He doesn't blow any whistles, wave any flags, or stop the whole life while He decides our penalty. We don't know what God does or thinks when we break one of His rules. And if our infraction is going to have any effect on our life in the world to come, we don't know what it is. You would think that if God took the time and trouble to give us all those rules, he would have been more specific about what we could expect when we break one of them. Football would never tolerate such a nebulous situation. I think our Creator, in his infinite wisdom, had a very good reason for arranging rules and punishment exactly the way he did. God gave us a code of behavior that will make us the best possible human beings, but I think he withheld punishment and details intentionally. He wants us to obey his laws because we choose to, not because we're afraid not to. Our God is a loving God. He knows our weaknesses and our limitations. Perhaps the reason God does not act like a referee in a football game is because our attempts at goodness and decency matter every bit as much to him as the results. One of the greatest gifts that God has given us is the free will to choose our own behavior. Good or bad, he doesn't interfere with our choices. If they are good, he doesn't give us a trophy, and if they are bad, he doesn't give us a penalty, at least not in this life. Our only option is to do the best we can and then wait and see what happens. There's really only one lesson to be learned from all this. The outcome of football games and life are unknown until they're over. But for while we're playing, football is a whole lot easier than being Jewish.